Utah is emerging as a national leader in responsible artificial intelligence. At the University of Utah, the 1U Responsible AI Initiative, along with the Responsible AI Community Consortium, is helping shape how organizations use AI safely, ethically, and effectively. Dr. Penny Atkins is the Director of Research and Science at the Scientific Computing and Imaging Institute at the University of Utah. She also supports the 1U Responsible AI Initiative. Dr. Atkins, Penny, thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate your time.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, you've been leading this work from the ground up, essentially, helping define what responsible AI really looks like in practice. So let's start here. First, tell our audience, what is the AI Leadership Blueprint?
Yes, so the AI Leadership Blueprint is something that we put together as an effort outside of our Responsible AI initiative. So as you mentioned, we have this Responsible AI Community Consortium that really brings together our partners across government, academia, and industry to work on various activities. The first of which is this AI Leadership Blueprint. And so it's really set up to be a beginning to end framework and blueprint to allow folks to integrate AI into their workflow. And so it has various chapters that will help guide you, whether you're starting from scratch and don't really know much about AI, or if you know AI but you'd like a little bit of guidance on how a policy might be implemented at your workplace.
It's kind of crazy to think that everyone talks about AI now, and it feels like a year ago, very few people talked about it. So I'm wondering, is that quick increase, that rapid increase in sort of understanding of the existence of AI, but not really any understanding of necessarily what it is or what it could become, is that what inspired the creation of the 1U Responsible AI Initiative and the AI Blueprint, or was it something else?
No, I think that's a great question. And I think stepping back, so the Responsible AI Initiative here on the University of Utah campus is about 2 years old, just about. It was really launched out of this idea that there's so many parallel efforts on campus working to advance data science and AI, and that we have this history of really being able to take science and impacting society here at the U. So that initiative was launched by our university president with a $100 million investment. That investment is set up to really advance our research expertise here at the U, so bringing in new faculty who will bring in expertise to Utah and hopefully have really amazing societal impact and regional impact. We have opportunities to bring in faculty fellows and do other activities. Building out our cyber infrastructure. This is something that I think there was a recent announcement about a $50 million investment as partnership from the U and the state of Utah, as well as the Huntsman Family Foundation. So it's really aiming at building cyber infrastructure, not only for us as researchers at the U, but for our community and region more broadly. And then the last aspect is kind of this idea of community engagement. And this is actually what started the Community Consortium. And so one of our first activities as the initiative was to really bring in our public-private partners and say, where are we as a state? What do we need to be doing? How do we work together to get there? And that was what inspired development of special interest groups and our Community Consortium. Of that, I think you previously talked to Kevin Williams. He was the leader in the space right away. And he really started this idea about having this AI blueprint, something that we can allow companies or small businesses to really have a little bit more guidance as to where to start. You hear about it every day, but you don't necessarily know how to implement a policy at your organization. And so this blueprint was set up to give folks that gap that's currently existing from being able to talk about AI and how we might use it in our technology at our houses or for specific work tasks, but really how to also integrate it in our entire organization.
There seems to be a pattern that I've noticed maybe over the last, 20 or 30 years, that a new technology emerges. People sort of have to embrace it and make it part of their lives. But in doing that, there's sort of not really, safety rails, guardrails on how you use that. And if the pattern is like new technology, people adapt it and use it, and then we look back on it 5, 10 years later and go, oh, what were we doing? We should have been thinking about this along the way, whether that's the having a PC and then the PC being on the internet and then social media. All these we seem to be looking back on and saying, oh, we need some guardrails in place. Your blueprint to that end focuses, it seems like, as much on people as it does on technology. So I guess first and foremost, is this an effort to help us not have to look back in 10 years and say, wow, we really should have been more responsible about how we went about that? And then what does it take to build a lasting culture of responsible AI, not just community-wide, but within organizations as well?
Yeah, I think Utah is doing an amazing job of really kind of taking the lead in this guardrails area. I think, as I mentioned with the blueprint at an organizational level, you think it even broader at a state or federal level, it's very difficult to know where we should draw the lines. Like, where should the guardrails be? And so the state of Utah, with our Office of AI Policy, has done a really good job of using the science and the innovation to actually kind of do a little bit more investigation about where those guardrails should be before we just put in guardrails and see where we are. So I think that Utah is really kind of establishing this framework that we built upon with this AI blueprint to give examples. And for example, for policies, we have, if you're fairly open to use of AI, here's an example policy. Whereas if your organization is much more conservative about use of AI, here's an example policy. And so I think we can't tell individual organizations or businesses how they should incorporate AI specifically, but we can give examples and provide that guidance. And I think, as you mentioned, the people are really important. I think if you think of the inherent development of the technology, those who are developing technology cannot also be experts in all things of social impact and bias and integrity and security even. So I think it's really important that we have this combined approach where people are coming together to develop these guardrails and kind of bound what we're doing with technology. And so that's something that this leadership blueprint is trying to do. But really, I do think that the people are so important. We need to make sure that everyone is using the technology and understands potential uses of the technology with that responsible lens when they're actually looking at it.
Well, and even when we say the term AI, that almost makes it sound like it's just a thing that's static as opposed to dynamic. And if anything, the change and the development and the next thing seem to be coming so rapidly with AI. I imagine that's a really big challenge to say, hey, let's try to put some safety rails in place or help you understand some things that you want to know now so that you don't have to look back 2, 5, 10 years down the road and say, I wish I'd known that. But that thing that you're trying to do that about just changes almost as quickly as you could, print something on paper to say, here's the policy, or that someone could implement that policy.
And that was some of the difficulty with this AI blueprint, is making something that's vague enough that it can stand more than a day or a month, but also specific enough so that it's something that can be implementable. And so that was something that we spent a lot of time discussing and trying to frame the right level of detail and the right level of specificity of what you're thinking about to really guide that. But I think underlying all of this is these durable skills, things like responsibility and ethics, and being able to kind of see the bigger picture about what you're doing. And I think that those things are very constant. And so that is helpful too when we're thinking about this kind of thing. But yeah, it's a tricky question.
What kind of impact do you hope that your leadership on this issue and your work on this issue and Utah's approach generally will have on the broader community and the broader AI community?
Our state has this idea of really being a leader, and I think that we have the same idea. We would love to be a leader when folks think about responsible AI or using AI for societal impact. I think that we are leading that effort in a lot of respects, even though we are just in Utah. I think that we have a lot of ability to actually kind of drive how this is formed. And so I would see success, ideally. We have a population here in Utah, in the US, even more broadly, where everyone has at least a level of knowledge about AI and data within AI to be able to make informed decisions. And so I think informing people about things like bias and how that could be affected, or how we could potentially use the technology more efficiently to reduce environmental impact. There's so many different facets that we can really think about. But I do think that in the long run, we would love to see more engagement from all people across our community and not just those who see themselves in the tech space.
And probably worth clarifying, I think, for a lot of people, because there's a relatively low level of trust in government and to a certain extent in higher education. that this isn't something you're sort of pushing on people and mandating these are the policies. You're trying to essentially give advice. So even though we say a blueprint or the policies, I want to make sure that when people hear that they're hearing that in the right connotation. Am I right there?
Absolutely. I think the blueprint is a little bit of a grab bag of examples. So I mentioned a specific example with policy, but I think a lot of it is set up to be that framework where people can pick and choose what's most relevant to them, be able to implement it, whether that's having general awareness, but maybe not allowing AI in your workplace or whatever that may be. But I think you still need to have this broad level understanding of the technology in order to make that informed decision of how it should be included in your workplace. But I do think the blueprint does a really nice job of setting up the various potential tools that you might want if you were to incorporate AI into your workplace in any regard, in any kind of level of detail.
I want to wrap up with this. So far in this effort, has there been a moment or a case study or something that jumps out to you that reminded you of why this is a really important thing to do right now, where you've said, oh, we're on the right track because this was really worth the effort?
That's a tricky question. I think that there are so many different moments, so many small moments and everyday moments that make it really clear why we did this. I think from the beginning, when we had that first public-private partnership event that I mentioned, and we had no idea, who was going to show up or how interested people would be in this conversation. And we just saw so many people show up and want to dive right in and really help us develop the framework that would help our community and our region. And I think that was the most inspiring. And I continue to see effort from so many of those people every week, every month. We're really seeing actual roll up your sleeves type effort in responsible AI for our consortium. And I think that that's just so impressive. It's clear that there's a need because there's so many people who want to be engaged in that conversation.
And if people want to find more information online about the blueprint, where can they go do that?
It is at rai.utah.edu/AI-blueprint.
A nice, easy URL.
Yes.
Ask ChatGPT where to find it. That's how you figure it out, right?
Exactly.
Dr. Penny Atkins, thanks for your time, for your vision on this, and for helping Utah set a national example for what responsible innovation can look like. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Marty.